What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Touchline Talk Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week. Really good show in store tonight. World Cup games to discuss for the first time. My biggest takeaways from the tournament so far. Then, segment two, couple other major developments here. Going to talk Kylian Mbappe and also check in on Leagues Cup. So kind of getting a little bit of everything. Some transfers talk, Leagues Cup, and of course the World Cup, which is where I'm going to begin with just some general thoughts and observations so far. I have three things I want to talk about based on what we've seen in kind of the halfway, almost the halfway point of group stage play. Most teams have only played one game. Some teams have played two. There is only so much to take away so far, but I have three main, I'm calling them reactions, takeaways, kind of using those two interchangeably, but three main themes I am seeing so far. The first one, very simply, is that there was this concern, and I certainly shared it, about going to 32 teams and whether that was going to dilute the product in the group stage. In no way, shape, or form has that happened. What has happened is that this has, going to 32 teams, has just proven and demonstrated how quickly this sport has grown on the women's side. It has been a massive success. And going to 32 teams was absolutely the right call because these games are competitive. They are more competitive, I would argue, than 2019 when you had fewer teams. Morocco, Panama, Zambia, only teams to lose by more than 3 goals. There were 3 games. Now, Zambia, it's happened twice, but there were 3 games at the Men's World Cup in December that were decided by more than 3 goals. So are there probably going to be a couple more before the group stage ends? Yeah. There'll probably be a couple more beatdowns. But proportionally so far, it looks better than 2019. I'm just kind of using that more than 3 as a metric to measure this. Because, of course, you can kind of frame it however you want. The point is, though, you're not seeing a bunch of 5-0s and 6-1s. Yes, you've seen some, but they happen on the men's side too. This tournament is just unbalanced no matter who's playing in it. But the only group that has really just kind of turned into a non-competitive race for first place is Group C, because Costa Rica and Zambia have gotten beaten pretty badly twice. And so it's a question of whether Spain or Japan is going to finish on top because those are your 2 teams that are going through. Other than that, though, everything is pretty much still up for grabs. And you look at some of these results. Starting with the favorites. U.S. Not all that impressive against Vietnam. Certainly were expected to win by more than 3 goals. Vietnam, defensively sound, defended well, didn't offer anything in attack, but kept themselves with an incredibly respectable scoreline. England had to find a way to get a goal to beat Haiti. Sweden had to rally to beat South Africa. We're not talking about the best teams in these groups outside of your obvious favorites here. These are teams they were supposed to dispatch easily, and that just didn't happen. Then you have the actual results. New Zealand and the Philippines both have wins. Jamaica held France to a draw. The next step is, can you go from the group stage as an actual test where you can't just assume you're going to beat people to how many surprises do we get in the knockout stage? And that's what we're going to have to wait and see over these next couple of games for most of these groups. Is it going to be 14 of the 16 teams we expected, where there were a couple you could kind of go either way with that second team? Or are we going to see somebody who has the opportunity for these results? A New Zealand, for example, in a group that's kind of turned into chaos, find a way to get through. Is somebody going to get a second win? Are we going to be significantly surprised by any of the teams in the round of 16? Because the first step coming into this tournament was got to get these games more competitive. And that has absolutely happened. That is proof. The expansion, it was time. It was the right call. You're seeing it with this tournament, and you're seeing some of the stories and the players you're getting to learn about because this field expanded to 32. The next step that we're going to have to wait and see if we're there or not is, do you kind of still already know who those 16 teams are going to be? Or are there going to be some surprises in there? And now it's not just this team might get a win, this team might be more competitive than you think. This team might actually get to the knockout stage. That's the next step in the development and the competitiveness of this tournament. But you've already taken a huge step here with the results so far, with the teams still in contention, with the teams that have won. Jamaica got destroyed 2019. Their goal difference, I think, was minus 11. Don't quote me on that. I was trying to remember off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure it was double digits, though. Already have a draw. Still very much alive. It's terrific to see, and that's obviously been one of the main storylines and one of the talking points, is just how competitive this tournament has been. It's phenomenal for the sport. The question is just how far can it go now? Can these teams not just cause issues in the group stage and really represent themselves well, but can they actually string together a couple results and get themselves into the knockout stage? Number 2 is what is going on with Norway and Spain kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm going to start with Spain because I don't have as much to say on Spain. I'm not putting very much stock at all in the actual results. Yes, they look spectacular against two teams that they should have handled the way that they did. Now, actually handling your business in this tournament, as I just talked about, not as common as you would think. So you got to give Spain props for coming in and looking as good as they were supposed to. The bigger part of this, though, what I do care about and what I do think is actually important for the moving forward in this tournament, is how focused and locked in the Spain team has been from the very beginning. Again, I don't know how much it means yet. We're going to have to see against better competition, starting with that group stage finale and into the knockout stage. But there's so much that has gone on with this team off the field. And you look at what they are doing on the field, you would never have known that. There is tension within this squad because of the Barcelona players, the Real Madrid players, the players who decided to leave. It's not like this is this well-oiled, cohesive unit that's all in this together. And you've got some players who are taking on more responsibility or who didn't maybe think they were going to be on a World Cup roster because the players who aren't here. There's just a lot going on. And yet, based on performances, you would have thought the team going through all of this was England, the U.S., Canada, I feel like, has looked like a team that's battling their federation and is just kind of tired for very understandable reasons, because that is what's happening. Spain have come in and had no problems whatsoever. That is noteworthy because to me that opens up the possibility that they actually start looking like one of the best teams in this tournament and aren't just kind of on the periphery, which is where I expected them to be. I came in thinking their ceiling was probably the quarterfinals. I am now very much open to the possibility they reach the final. I'm still not putting them in my group of favorites. I need to see them against better opposition before I change my tune on that. But their ceiling is higher because I was so concerned about just mentally what this was going to look like and emotionally. And so far they have checked every single box in that category. That to me is the takeaway from what they've done so far. It's not about how they've looked. It's not about this from a score perspective and a dominance perspective. It's about the fact that they actually seem locked in and are putting together results in a way that very few teams in this tournament are. The way everybody else has looked, the door is starting to open up a little bit for Spain to make more noise than I thought. Still not convinced they're going to get there, but I am open to the possibility. Then we got Norway. It has been another really, really tough start of the major tournament. However, they still do have a decent chance to go through, assuming they can beat the Philippines, which you can't take anything for granted with this Norway team. But if they win that game, the way that this group stage is played out, schedule-wise, it's not a guarantee, but they're in a good spot, especially if they can win by 2-3 goals and give themselves some goal difference cushion. So, certainly there is plenty of hope left, but they have to win this last game now. And it's going to be difficult for them to win the group. But even if they get out of the group stage, Ada Hegerberg is hurt. Seems like she's going to try and play in that last game. She got pulled right before the second one. Kind of a last second thing because of this groin injury. Hopefully she could play, obviously. You got that going on. Carolyn Grant Hampson gets dropped to the bench. Goes after her manager for dropping her. Then apologizes. It seems like they've got that all taken care of. But stuff like that just doesn't disappear. There is clearly tension and frustration here. And I thought this might be the tournament with Hegerberg healthy and back into the fold for a little while now. Graham Hansen in such good form for Barcelona that maybe they would figure it out this time. And, well, maybe they still will. I'm not holding my breath about this anymore. And by figured out, I meant a lot more than just get to the knockout stage or even just win their group. I meant actually live up to their potential talent-wise and get to the quarterfinals and give yourself a chance to get to the semis. Because there just aren't very many teams that have a 1-2 duo like that. And one of them is hurt, and one of them got benched. And then went after the manager for benching her. There's clearly systemic things going on here that they have not fixed yet. Maybe they can find a way. I'm out on this now. I was in at the beginning. I talked myself into it, and I am backtracking on that. I've seen what I need to see. They're in that category of I just can't trust it until I actually see it happen at this point. The other thing I want to bring up here, though, before I get off of Norway. In just under 2 hours, the U.S. is going to play the Netherlands in a game that will, in all likelihood, decide who wins that group. That game became even more important because of what is happening with this Norway team and what is happening in that group. I don't care how bad Norway look. From a talent perspective, which is really all that you are talking about when you are talking about the U.S., do you have the talent to kind of catch fire one day and have everything go your way and take advantage of these opportunities that kind of fall in your lap? Norway is the only team in that group that has that ability, that has players who can go win a game, decide a moment. The Caroline Graham Hansen, Ada Hegerberg type players. That is what I am trying to avoid if I am Vlatko Andonovski. There are probably better teams in that group. There are certainly more cohesive teams, more well-balanced teams. But I trust the best teams in this tournament to be able to get past a Switzerland, for example. That's just teams you have to play if you're going to be serious about contending in this tournament. And so if Norway doesn't win this group, now all of a sudden you are looking at that quarter of the bracket, assuming things go everywhere else as expected. with just nobody who's really going to scare you. And you're looking at the bottom half with a Sweden, with a Spain, potentially a Norway. And so not only did the U.S. get the quote-unquote easier side of the bracket in general, it looks like, assuming they win the group, the U.S. is going to get the easier side of the bracket. Where there isn't going to be a team that really is anywhere near their level until the semifinals. But that's assuming they take care of business against the Netherlands and get those 3 points. Because if you don't win this group and Norway end up dropping to second, now all of a sudden things get a lot more interesting if you're in that part of the bracket with a Spain, with a Norway, instead of where you expect to be up at the top. So that is the other part of this I wanted to bring up. It is incredibly important with the way things are going. If you want to give yourself the fewest amount of opportunities to face teams that are somewhat comparable to you talent-wise, that just on their best day might be better than you. It's even more important now the U.S. wins that group. And we're, a few hours away as I'm talking from figuring out probably whether that's going to happen or not, depending on, of course, things could go a different direction in that third group stage game. But if you beat the Netherlands, you got to feel pretty good about the situation. So that game, even more significance now with what is happening with Norway and with that group. Then the final thing, there is just no clear favorite. This is how I felt coming in, but it's just been reinforced by what we've seen so far. The first thing is that there have not been any eye-catching statement wins by the teams that I consider the favorites. Right? The U.S. starts with a 13-0 in 2019. Does it tell you all that much? No. But it's a statement of intent. It sends a message. You didn't get that from the U.S. against Vietnam. You didn't get that from England against Haiti. The only team that gave it to you was Germany. And Germany was playing one of the worst teams at this tournament from a talent perspective. And it was, it wasn't 10. Nobody has put up an eye-catching scoreline yet. And we haven't, starting with this U.S.-Netherlands game, we're going to start getting these. But we haven't gotten a lot of quality opponent matchups either, where you learn something because of the teams that you're playing in the group. We're going to get some, it just seems like these are all kind of at the end. We're going to start getting them here in a matter of hours, like I mentioned. So nobody has really done anything out of the ordinary that grabs your attention and makes you go, oh, they just look like they're the best team at this tournament. Because the teams that have impressed, outside of Germany, which again, I'm just not putting a lot of stock in a win over Morocco, are those second-tier teams, Spain and Brazil in particular. They've looked fantastic. I'm not putting them in my top tier of teams that I consider favorites just because they basically did what everybody expected them to do. Again, while acknowledging not everybody has done that this tournament. But you're looking for a statement from, England. Had England gone out and beat Haiti 8-0 or something. But sometimes, as good as that team is, they struggle to score. I will continue to talk about my questions and the concerns I have for the U.S. All that has really happened is that some of these teams that are more in the... I have them in my tier 2 as contenders that are more kind of on the dark horse side of the teams that could actually win this tournament. You're Brazil, you're Spain, and some other people are higher on Spain than I am. I will acknowledge that. But those are the teams you go, oh, maybe they can go a little bit deeper than I thought. Maybe they can make the semis. Maybe they can make the final and give themselves an opportunity to actually win this thing. That's all that's happened so far. And so the gap that was already not very big has just gotten a little bit smaller because the most informed teams are not the ones with the most talent. They're kind of that second group of other contenders. And so we just haven't learned all that much yet. And we'll be able to learn some more before the group stage, but it's going to be interesting going into the knockouts because that's going to be one of the first real tests for a lot of these teams. And so you get kind of one first impression there, and if it doesn't go well, you're done. And so maybe we get something over the next week or so where one of these, Germany continues to look really good, England turns it around, the U.S. gets a very convincing win against the Netherlands, something like that, where the conversation changed a little bit. But as far as I'm concerned for right now, this is still completely up for grabs, and the only thing that I feel differently about is that I'm giving more attention to the Brazils and the Spains in terms of the conversation about how many teams can win this tournament, who are legitimate contenders. They've opened that possibility up, as I talked about at the very beginning with Spain, which just means the gap between the top and the teams chasing them is even smaller than I originally thought. Great for the sport, makes it very hard to figure out what's going to happen next in this tournament. That is all for the World Cup reactions, takeaways, thoughts, recap, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to take my first break. When I come back, it's time to talk Kylian Mbappe and Leagues Cup. You're watching the Touchline Talk Show. Don't go anywhere. And what is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week. It is time to talk Mbappe and Leagues Cup. Haven't had any conversation about everything going on with Kylian Mbappe yet. Wanted to make sure World Cup got the attention it deserved in terms of a preview last week. And there wasn't all that much to really discuss in terms of news with Mbappe. That has obviously changed over the past week. And so today is the perfect day to really dive into this. It is such a strange situation. And the question I keep coming back to is, what does Kylian Mbappe expect PSG to do? What did he think was going to happen when he informed them he wasn't going to extend his contract? And I don't particularly want to defend PSG, but in this case, I get it. Now, part of this is that PSG gave Mbappe so much power and so much leverage that he is in control. The only thing PSG can do is what PSG appear willing to do, which is to freeze him out and try and convince him not to stay for the rest of his contract. And then the next dynamic to this is there's a good article in The Athletic about the legal ramifications of this if it continues into the season. Basically, French labor law, you can do whatever you want as a club during the transfer window. But after the transfer window ends, it's a different situation in terms of the legality of just not playing players. And PSG have gotten in trouble for this before. Now, it's not cut and dry in terms of it is clearly illegal. But if they go through with this, and Mbappe is a member of this team and not playing when the window closes, they are opening themselves up to a lawsuit and more headaches. And at that point, whether they win the lawsuit or not is, only half the story, because it's about the frustration, the tension, the distraction, all of that kind of stuff. But from Mbappe's perspective, PSG have to do everything in their power to not let him leave for free. He is the most valuable asset in the sport. And I don't like talking about people as assets. But you get what I'm saying there. They were never just going to go, okay, that's fine. We'll take you for another season, then you can go to Real Madrid. And what I am so confused about is that there's a solution here that Mbappe doesn't seem interested in. And that's to get some kind of contract extension so that he retains his value. And then there is an understanding that he goes to Real Madrid next summer. Because he seems, at least originally, when he made this decision not to extend his contract, very content to play at PSG this season with his contract winding down. Which is the part of this I don't get. Because PSG were never just going to accept that. So what did he want PSG to do? And now the other possibility that got thrown around was you go to Saudi Arabia for a year. The total price tag was over $1 billion between the transfer fee and Mbappe's salary. Seems like that, according to Fabrizio Romano, that's a no-go. That never seemed realistic to me in terms of Mbappe wanting to do that. So your two options are either sign an extension so that your value is retained, because it seems like PSG have just accepted he's leaving. So there's not going to be any roadblocks to getting a deal with Real Madrid done next summer. Or convince Real Madrid to come to the table now so that this gets done. And again, because PSG handed him the keys, all they can do is just say, we're not going to let you play your contract out. So either you're going to sign another one so that we can make this deal with Real Madrid next summer, or you're going to get Real Madrid to come to the table now, or you're not going to play. Because that's the only piece of leverage they have. And who knows how it ends. And it seems there was reports out there that Mbappe was content to just sit on the bench. Now, going into a Euros and an Olympics, interesting conversation for another day. But that's the part of this that baffles me, is that it just seems like Mbappe is not taking into consideration PSG's viewpoint on this and PSG's perspective. Because it's one thing if PSG were just saying, no, you can't leave. This is almost the opposite. It's you need to leave if you're going to leave. Because again, the one thing PSG have to do everything in their power to avoid is him walking out the door for free. And he just seems unwilling to make that happen, which appears to be part of the reason PSG is so frustrated with him. And I've been reading things that are basically saying they feel like he's betrayed them by not working with them to make sure that they get the transfer fee for him. And again, I'm not a huge fan of just agreeing with PSG, but I get it. I would just love to hear from Mbappe. What does he want out of this? Because he holds all the cards. If he wants to go to Real Madrid, then there are two options. You convince Real Madrid to get you now, or you work with PSG to set it up for next summer. And neither of those seem particularly close to happening at this moment. And so I would be doing the exact same thing if I was PSG. You got to use what you have to try and force his hand. But you can't force him to do anything, especially if he's willing to sit on the bench. And especially if it's going to lead to a lawsuit. Because you put all of your chips into the Kylian Mbappe basket. And I probably would have done the same thing too. Because you had to take the chance. But at the same time, 6 months after he signed that contract, the Real Madrid rumors and unhappiness started, the reports about him being unhappy all started again. And it's Mbappe you got to try. It's not that I think PSG made a mistake in the way they went about this. And they have gotten to the point where they realized that you can't take that risk again of potentially letting him walk for free. If he can't commit to you, you got to move on and get what you can for him. And I'm just confused as to why this is so hard to figure out when everybody at this point is kind of accepting and wants the same things. It's not like PSG are refusing to sell. PSG have come to terms with the fact that he is going to Real Madrid. They just want it to be done in a way that benefits them. Or they're going to do what they can to try and make that happen. And it ultimately, they gave him everything they possibly could to try and keep him, and it worked. And now you're paying the price for that because he has all of the leverage. The only thing they have left is you're not playing on a 1-year deal, on an expiring contract. We will sit you on the bench. So either figure it out now, or you're not playing next season. It just doesn't seem like we're close to any kind of solution here. And again, it just baffles me because I just don't feel like it should be that hard to figure out. Because everybody's working, everybody is at least accepting of where this is going to go. And if Mbappe is happy to run his contract out, he's got to understand that PSG aren't going to let him do that. And maybe he just doesn't care. And it also gets into conversations about his legacy, where this could have... Look, him deciding he wanted to leave France was going to be a hit to his legacy and his reputation in France and, among PSG fans, obviously. But there was a way to do this where everybody was on the same page. And it didn't need to be this tense. PSG gave you the ultimatum, sign a contract, or we're selling. At that point, you make a decision. And if your decision is Real Madrid, you go to Real Madrid, and it's not this messy. But here we are. I'm just going in circles at this point. That's the part of this I really want to emphasize, though, is I'm just struggling to understand Mbappe's thought process here and what he's actually trying to get out of it. Because it just seems like he won't come out and say, I want to go to Real Madrid. But every indication is that's what he wants. PSG can help him do that, but they're not working together. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens here in the next week or so with this and see how long it drags on. Who knows what happens next? It just appears He's not going to Saudi Arabia. That's the one tangible development we've gotten so far in this. Also want to take a few moments to check in on what's happening with Leagues Cup. Of course, the big story, what Lionel Messi is doing for Inter Miami. 2 games, goals, assists, 2 wins for Inter Miami. Couldn't have asked for a better start. He, of course, has the magical late game winner. Then they trounce Atlanta United. And that was an Atlanta team with most of your preferred 11 out there. Getting a win like that does mean something. This tournament is strange. Still trying to get a feel for how much people actually care about it. It's going to take time to kind of build a reputation. But this is the games the teams are playing right now. So you're going to play most of your players. And Atlanta was no exception. It's not like that was a terrible C squad that they put out there. And Miami ripped them to shreds. I still, before I really get on board with this and completely change how I feel about Inter Miami, because I said this in my weekend roundup and I'll say it here again. To me, what the rest of the season is going to be is a lot of what you saw in that first game. They're obviously much better with them on the field. I still don't think they scare the best teams in MLS. I still think they're going to have defensive struggles. He's going to win them some games and steal some points they don't deserve. But it's not like they're going to turn into this juggernaut overnight. And I still feel that way. For me to change my mind on that, got to see what it looks like on the road. Consistently, over an extended period of time. You know, is Messi playing 60 to 90 minutes every game? And I want to see it during MLS regular season. Because, as I said before, we just don't know what this tournament actually means. This is the perfect opportunity for Inter Miami to go on a run. They could absolutely win this tournament. Because when you get into this condensed time frame, and you're talking about basically moving forward here, elimination games, Messi's the kind of guy that can Messi might be the guy on the planet who can go win you a game out of nothing. It's a different conversation when you're trying to build week after week after week in MLS and catch up to everybody. That's what I'm still not convinced they can do. So I want to see them in MLS regular season when you're playing the Cincinnatis of the world, you're playing the Philadelphias of the world, the Columbuses of the world, New England Revolution, the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and you're getting every team's best shot every week. Because once you get back in MLS play, it's the push for the playoffs. And everybody's trying to not only get in, but be in form heading into the playoffs. There's that kind of acclimation period. The Sounders are the best in the league at this. Sometimes they just don't really get going until, about this time. And then from July onward, once the summer comes, they start tearing it up and all of a sudden they're one of the most dangerous teams in the league. You don't have that kind of time if you're into Miami. So, to me, I'm very much treating this as 2 separate performances and situations. I don't see all that much overlap between them. But they just did trounce a good Atlanta team at home. That does mean something, as I mentioned. Still want to see it on the road. Still want to see it in the actual MLS regular season environment. But this is working so far. I'm not going to get too excited too quickly. Need to see more consistency before I feel like the team you saw against Atlanta is the team you're going to see every week. Certainly they are capable of those kind of performances. They got to be able to do it week in and week out, though, if they're going to make the playoffs. That's the part I still have a mental hurdle with. Outside of that, just as the tournament overall, it's been very balanced. You haven't seen a huge lean in the direction of Liga MX or a huge lean in the direction of MLS. You got two teams as I'm recording this, and games are now underway Wednesday night. But you got Mazatlan and Inter Miami are your two teams through as group winners. One MLS, one Liga MX. You've got some groups where the Liga MX teams are off to a better start, some where the MLS teams are. It just seems like two very well-balanced leagues because that's what they are. You're going to probably see more MLS teams just because of raw numbers making it. But proportionally, I feel like it's going to be pretty equal. And, it's just hard because some teams have played one game, some teams have played two. We're going to just get a lot of clarity by the time we get to the end of this weekend. And I believe the group stage ends on Monday night, if I remember correctly. But there hasn't been a huge, here comes Liga MX or MLS is destroying Liga MX. It's been some for Liga MX, some for MLS. And again, most teams have played one game. I don't know it's one game in this new tournament. I don't know what to make of that yet. And also, I fundamentally don't make a lot of whatever happens in knockout tournaments like this because they are inherently unpredictable. So we're just going to have to see how this thing goes. But that is my takeaway so far, is it looks like two evenly balanced leagues, because that's what you have. The other MLS thing I wanted to mention before I move on. Sam Surridge is in from Nottingham Forest, joining Nashville as a designated player. Nashville has tried and failed to identify other designated player strikers that can finally get this team some goals. So this has to actually work before what I'm about to say can happen. But if Sam Surridge comes in and is worth something like $6.5 million they paid for him, Nashville goes from being a really difficult team to play against that is set up for postseason success because of their defensive foundation and the fact they have a match winner in Hani Mukhtar, to a top-tier contender to win MLS Cup. I will not pick them to win MLS Cup until somebody else starts scoring goals. Going back to my tournament philosophy, you have to have more than one way to win. And their way to win right now is defense and Hani Mukhtar. That is a better foundation than most teams, because you do have the guy that can get you the goal and can be the best player on the field. But to be able, so that gives you a chance against anybody. But to go from that to being able to win round after round after round and to adjust to the different situations that get thrown your way and the unpredictable nature of knockout tournaments, you gotta have a plan B. And that is where Nashville have come up short time and time again. They don't have anything outside of Mukhtar going forward. If Surridge is that guy, they are right there with every team in the league. If I'm picking MLS Cup, to me it's a 3-horse race in the East between them, Philly, and Cincinnati. And right now, I'm picking Philly and Cincinnati because they have those guys. They have multiple of them. But you throw Surridge in the mix, now it's a different conversation. This is the story of LAFC last season. What Steve Cherundolo has done that he's not getting enough credit for. They went from being a team that beats you one way, that doesn't deal well with chaos, that had this set foundation and approach that was how they were going to play no matter what was happening, to a much more tactically flexible team that can dominate the ball when they need to, that can hit on the counter when they need to, that is still really good defensively. It's just a much more multidimensional team. It's not an accident that they went and won MLS Cup and then nearly won CONCACAF Champions League. with a team that I still contend is nowhere near as good relative to the rest of the league as some of those Bob Bradley teams, particularly the Supporter Shield one, the Diego Rossi Carlos Vela combination. I'm not blown away by the LAFC talent level. Of course, they're a great team. But what has changed is that they are so much more difficult to beat in tournament play. And you're seeing this. They haven't been great over the regular season. But you still want no part of them because they are so well equipped to deal with the chaos now. Nashville's got to be able to get to that point too. It is what is holding them back. Because foundationally, they have the formula to win MLS Cup. There aren't many teams that do. They are one of them. But that missing piece is the striker. Somebody else to go score you 15 goals in a season. If Sam Surridge is that guy, I'm going to be talking about, and he and Mukhtar are healthy, and they look like Nashville coming into the postseason. To me, they are right there with anybody. You have to count them as one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to win MLS Cup. That's how important this signing is, if they get it right. So I wanted to acknowledge that because there will not be a signing in Major League Soccer that holds more weight. And by signing, I mean this transfer window, mid-season, that holds more weight than this one. This is the difference between being a good team, a very good team, I should say, maybe even a great one, and a championship level team. If Sam Surridge delivers and is what Nashville is paying for him to be. That is all for this segment. I'm going to take my second break. When I come back, wrapping up with the weekend look ahead as always, the games you should be looking out for in the World Cup and Leagues Cup this weekend. You're watching the Touchline Talk Show. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back one more time to the Touchline Talk Show. It is time for the weekend look ahead. Just doing World Cup and Leagues Cup this week. Your games to watch in the World Cup, obviously, you got them going on every single day. The ones I'm highlighting for this weekend, though. Sweden, Italy on Saturday, France, Brazil on Saturday. Italy, so far so good. This is an opportunity to, and kind of the question of, can they make this group interesting, or are they going to be just trying to make sure they get in as the second team? This is going to change the complexion of that final match day. So it's one of the more important games you're going to see in the group stage because it has ramifications for Sweden and the two teams behind them in that group. France, Brazil, obviously two of your most talented teams. Brazil looked excellent. France, how do you bounce back from that Jamaica game? Wendy Renard, a little bit banged up. See if she's able to go. And also, again, can you win this group? This is just like the USA-Netherlands game. Your first opportunity to go play against a really, really high-quality opponent. What does that look like? Is there a clear gap between these two teams? Can Brazil follow up what they did and all of a sudden really start cementing themselves as a team that needs to be talked about as one that can win this tournament? Or does France kind of take care of business and calm the excitement surrounding Brazil? And then Sunday, your first set of group stage finales, Norway, Philippines, Switzerland, New Zealand. I mentioned this before. Norway need the win, and if they get it, they're in a pretty good position. But this thing is wide open right now. Switzerland, so far, obviously top of the group, but there are so many different end results that could change how this is going to go. it just makes for dramatic entertainment. I believe these are 3:30 a.m. Eastern time kickoffs, if I remember correctly. So that is unfortunate, but definitely something to at least keep your eye on if you don't want to get up in the middle of the night to just see how this all plays out, because all of these teams have an opportunity. Norway, you know, the other three teams in this group have wins. Norway does not. So you really can't ask for a better group stage finale than you're going to get in that group to kind of start the beginning of the end of the group stage in this World Cup. So, and then Leagues Cup. There's a lot going on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and it's hard to know exactly what the significance is going to be, because everybody or most teams are playing a game between now and then. Many of them right now as I'm recording. So I just wanted to highlight a couple that I find most interesting, because it's really hard to know which games are going to be the most intriguing from a standing standpoint and what they mean. So Saturday, Austin and Juarez. Can Austin just get something going this season? It's been tough from the very beginning with the CONCACAF Champions League debacle, and it just hasn't gotten much better. This was a fresh start, and still looking to kind of get things going in Leagues Cup. DC United and Pumas. I'm just fascinated by this DC United team and Wayne Rooney. Taxi Futas away from the team after alleged racial abuse. You can go read more about that. Off the field, it's been difficult. I still just really like this team and the way they play. Can they get things back on track and kind of build some momentum here? And then Sunday, Monterrey, San Jose. Earthquakes having a really good season. Monterrey, staple of Liga MX. And then, oh, I messed this up. I apologize. I have San Jose twice. Monterrey's playing Seattle. That's who it is. I wrote San Jose twice. Monterrey, Seattle. So two of the bigger teams in North America. Sorry about that. And then Tigres, San Jose. Earthquakes having a great season. Tigres, quite possibly the class of North American soccer when it comes to clubs. So really looking forward to that one. And again, who knows what the actual significance of all these games are. Going to have to wait till everybody to play game 2 to figure that out. But those are your Leagues Cup games for this weekend. That is all for this week's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.